Kia ora and welcome to One Ancestor at a Time live stream. I am Sui Taloa Simon Young, and I'm really excited to have you with me for the next little while. So a great part about putting your story out there, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on in an article form or in a journal like New Zealand Genealogist, is the feedback and the inquiries that you get. That wasn't the reason that I went about doing One Ancestor at a Time. It was more like, I have these stories, I want to understand them better myself, and I want to get them out there. But today I want to share with you a couple of really neat comments that came on my second to last video about my great-grandfather who was in the HMS Irresistible in World War I. Now, we know World War I was 1914 to 1918, but to somebody serving at that time, they didn't know when it was going to end, and for each battle that they were in, they didn't know whether they would live or die. And I really wanted to bring that to life. And so I just want to share with you, if I may, some of the awesome feedback that I've had. And so just testing out YouTube's screen sharing thing and making sure I'm doing the right thing here. Okay, alrighty. Yes, this looks correct. This looks correct. No, it's actually the wrong one. It is the right one, but it's the wrong one. Okay. All right. So here we are on the channel One Ancestor at a Time, which is where you are right now. The video in question is Ship Sinks, but he survives, surviving the sinking of HMS Irresistible months ago. So let's stop that so it doesn't talk over me. But yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to let you know about Isengard Mordor, probably not his real name. I'm a Turkish man with extreme interest towards shipwrecks of historical importance within our waters, of which there are so many, as I found out. And I've been studying what I could find in my 22 years of research. And due to my interest in detail, the more information, the better. This video has been very interesting to me. I'd always wondered about what the crew itself experienced during the sinking of the Irresistible. Even if it was a short account, I still appreciate you sharing with us. Thank you. By the way, if you're curious, I am so curious. The missing sections and the damage around them were due to partial salvage operations conducted during the 1960s. I was lucky enough to talk to one of the divers who partook in said operations before he died in 2019. He said that before they tore into the engine room, there was a 2.5 meter diameter hole caused by the mine explosion, and the red paint on the underside of the hull was slightly visible. During the operation, they removed the entire engine room as it was heavily rich in brass, as well as the torpedo tubes in the bow. That's pretty amazing that the artifacts, especially vessels, because they carry us, we really depend on them, they have a whole life of their own that carries on after they've sunk, which is really, really fascinating. So thank you, Isengard Mordor, for your comment, which is just a little while ago, 9 months ago. But the main comment I wanted to share with you today was from Virginia, who said, "Dear Simon, I was so very happy to find this video the other day. My grandfather, who I sadly never knew, was H.C. Pellow, the lieutenant commander on the HMS Irresistible, and I was delighted to see him in the photo new to me with your great-grandfather. He's standing on the left of the chaplain as we view it." Now, I'll just share that photo with you here. Now, can I zoom? I can zoom. This is the stern-faced gentleman that she is talking about, H.C. Pellow. Grandfather, like so many of that generation, was a very private, modest, and reserved man who did not share his World War I memories readily, even with his closest family. One fact that was passed down, however, was that he had the unique distinction of being sunk twice in one day. At one time, he was the youngest serving commander in the Royal Navy, was mentioned in dispatches, and undoubtedly had many stories to tell. Unfortunately, he was later invalided out of the Navy in World War II and suffered a stroke, which left him unable to communicate further, which is so sad. How many stories went along with him? I was doing some research for provenance of a couple of items destined for the auction room. A pair of monogrammed gold cufflinks with his initials there, HCP, and a heavy brass naval crown, which is always on display in my childhood home. The story behind the crown, as far as I can remember, was that grandfather rescued it from the ship before it went down. When I found this video and heard your relative managed to take a memento from the ship, which he did, a whole bookshelf, it gave credence to our family legend. So also in your photo, grandfather is displaying prominently those very cufflinks and looking rather sternly at me through the camera. So Virginia says, I immediately withdrew both items from sale. The fact of being sunk twice puzzled me for a while, as the crew of the Irresistible were rescued by HMS Weir, which wasn't sunk. However, I since discovered that 10 volunteers remained on board to pass a tow hawser to HMS Ocean. Yes, I remember this when I was researching the story. Because when I was researching the story, there are so many steps to the tale that have been recorded in such detail. And it was quite a process of building up the story and then deciding what to cut down, what's really important to just the YouTube video. But she's quite right. There was a hawser, which, as far as I can understand, is a thing used for one ship to tow another ship. Yeah, a tow hawser was passed through to HMS Ocean. They were then taken aboard that vessel, which itself was mined and sunk. From this, I surmised that my grandfather was one of those few men. He was young, unmarried, and very likely to have volunteered for that duty. So it's really interesting. So we have my great-grandfather here, who at that stage was in his mid-30s, which, if we think of military service a bit like sports, that's quite old, you know, and he had a family. He had 3 children at that stage, if not 4. And he really was not one of those young people who were gung-ho about the war. We have Pellow here, who I'm not sure what his attitude towards the war was, but as his granddaughter says, he was young and unmarried and very likely to have volunteered for that duty. I would be so interested to see any more photos or learn if your great-grandfather mentioned his fellow officers in his journals. So I did get in touch with Virginia, and I just want to share with you some of what I shared with her. We had photos, but not of Mr. Pellow, unfortunately. However, he does get a mention in my great-grandfather's journal. Tuesday, August 18th, 1914, still patrolling. Past these days, working in the morning, learning in the afternoon, hockey and bath in the evening, and auction bridge after dinner. Our standing bridge party, the PMO, Fleet Surgeon Facey, I'm guessing at the name, the handwriting is a little bit dodgy. The pilot, Pellow, the navigator, Surgeon Parnell, and myself. I'm a bit of a novice, I fear, though I rather fancy myself at ordinary bridge. So very interesting. In those early days, right at the beginning of World War I, there was a lot of patrolling, a lot of learning, because for my great-grandfather, he was new he felt like he had a lot to catch up on. It was a time when naval technology was advancing very fast. And bridge, a game which I've never played, but in other bits and pieces of my great-grandfather's memorabilia, yes, bridge was very popular for them to play. I thought I would share just a few other things that he said about his shipmates. The captain especially got some special mentions. Let's have a look. Thursday, August 13th, got buttonholed by the captain and had to listen to some most depressing pessimism about the war. He's the most gloomy captain I've ever met, but I tried to cheer him up with indifferent success. He tried to persuade me that we were all going to be killed, blown up or drowned. Very nice and cheerful. Oh, gosh. Wednesday, August 26th, we had a small fire in one of the flats due to a resistance coil getting red hot, and though the damage was only 2 foot brushes and a tin of blacking, burnt 8 holes. 8 holes flooded the flat and nearly drowned me. Let us hope they'll be equally smart in a big fire. The captain, half crazy, bellowing out to flood the magazines. What a pity he cannot control himself. A little worried for my great-grandfather here. Thursday, August 27th, starting getting the anchor up about 3:30 a.m. And before we had it off the ground, signal was made to turn about 12 points. And the Formidable turned and headed straight for us. I hailed from the forecastle and said, we are not away yet. But she kept on and caught us a heavy glancing blow on the port side, smashing a searchlight and landing one of our guns. A chance for further exhibition of the captain's lamentable lack of self-control. After ordering all WT doors to be shut and reopened, he lapsed into a series of incoherent bellows. You may be relieved to know that this captain was then relieved, or at least had a different assignment, and so that the commanding officer at the time of the Irresistible's sinking was a different captain. However, Irresistible did sink, so 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I couldn't possibly comment. Yes, that was a fantastic interaction. I was really happy to hear from Virginia, and really happy to learn, more about a fellow crew member. And it made me think about our family history. Sometimes, if you're like me and your family tree is mostly complete in recent generations, it's a little bit overwhelming. You don't quite know where to start, and there seems to be so much detail. But once you start doing, as the title of this channel recommends, once you start researching one ancestor at a time, you can go beyond the initial instinct, which is just, I only want to look at relatives. It's our selfish urge, right? We look at a family photo, we try to find ourselves, or we look at an old family photo, who is my father or grandfather, or that sort of thing. But if we think of our own lives, the lives that our descendants will be studying, there's so much else that goes on in our lives, and there's so many other people in our lives. So, for example, my uncle sadly passed away recently, and we had essentially a family reunion at his funeral. And it's always the way, isn't it? These are the things, these are the appointments that we must keep. And everyone was like, oh, it would be so good to catch up more regularly, that sort of thing. So family, we often see them, weddings and funerals, basically. But there are our workmates who make our lives. They're our friends, our neighbors, our communities. And so when you're trying to, if you have an ancestor that you don't have a lot of detail about, I'd say, first of all, start with their siblings, because we there's not, especially as we go back in time, there's not that many only children. We do come as a batch, and sometimes the sibling story is very interesting. To digress a little bit, on my mum's side, in the early days of Pākehā, New Zealand, 1860s to 1880s, there were families routinely of 20 kids, and the dynamics are really different there, because the older kids become essentially aunties and uncles or secondary parents. And so, and that's not only when the kids are kids at home, it happens throughout the rest of life. So at first I was overwhelmed by reading my mum's side of the family, because there's so many names. But when I did, I started to see, oh, okay, they went to this place because their brother or their brother-in-law or sister-in-law, etc., paved the way for them, gave them a job, that kind of thing. And we start to get outside of our Western individual way of thinking, where the individual person is the measure of all things. And instead we go, oh, let's look at things as family groups, and not just nuclear families, but extended family groups. So anyway, back to where I was starting. If you're trying to get more context around a person in your family tree, start with their siblings and look at the dates, the places, the times, that sort of thing. But then try and find information about their job. And if they're in the armed services, well, great. There's so much information that is available. Now, having said that, Virginia and I both mentioned that we struggled to find a listing of the crew. There's nowhere where you can find easily a crew listing of HMS Irresistible in 1915. So yeah, very puzzling. Only the captain's name, which was different from the captain's name in my grandfather's journal. So yeah, there are lots of records. So I've got all of my great-grandfather's postings throughout. He got around. He really did. He was born in Australia, joined the Navy in Portsmouth, but then was back and forth to Australia and back. A heck of a lot of service around the Mediterranean. And yeah, so he certainly got around. But what is hard to find anywhere is why exactly he was invalided. And he was not only invalided after that's hard to say, invalided. Anyway, he was not only invalided after the sinking of the Irresistible, but he was also invalided several times before. And I have no clue why. I have a theory, and this is just a theory. And this is the thing with our family research. We can't know everything. We can suggest, and we can surmise. And so I surmise that my great-grandfather got PTSD, because that was not an accepted thing back then, and it is certainly now, and it's there's no stigma about it, but perhaps that was the reason. I have no idea, actually. I can see through his journal that he was of quite a sensitive nature, and my gosh, not as bad as the captain though. I think sometimes we, especially our generation who have not had to experience war, touch wood, touch Formica, we haven't had to experience the reality of war, so we can luxuriously hold, as I do, fairly pacifist views without having to put them into practice. But I love war movies and I love watching them, but there's a real tendency to romanticize, and to romanticize the valor and the vigor and the sense of really being alive when you're in life-threatening situations. But the prevalence of PTSD and of danger just must have been such an awful reality. And then so great movie about this. It doesn't cover the naval battle at all, but Sir Peter Jackson's goodness, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Sir Peter Jackson's movie where he took film footage from the Western Front, colorized it, sped it or adjusted the speed so it was more natural, and got lip readers to read what was being said, and got voiceover artists to add in what was being said. Fantastic, amazing piece of work. And so one of the real insights from there was that the servicemen who served were quite shocked when they came back, and when the end of the war was announced, because their sense of purpose disappeared, and nobody wanted to talk about it at home. It was like, well, thank goodness that's over. You're back to normal. And yet, if you've survived, if you've taken part in war, how would you get back to normal? There's no normal particularly to get back to. Anyway, I do go on. But thank you very much, Virginia, for your comment. And thank you, you who are watching, for your comments on this post. Most welcome. And for your thoughts. I'm going to have another one next week. Somebody was pushing back against one of my pieces of advice about the 8 tools that you need for family history storytelling. And it opens up a whole can of worms. But for now, if I leave you with any one thought, it's this. When you're studying family history, think about the workmates, think about the work that they did, and think about the workmates that they had, and see if that's an angle where you might be able to find some more information about your departed ones who you'd love to get to know better. Okay, this is Sui Taloa Simon Young. I promise I'll have a full episode to you sometime quite soon. I've been working on it. As with all of them, it's very hard to know what to keep in and what to leave out. It is about a sideways trip on the family tree, where I will introduce to you my Samoan family and my Matai title. So that is going to be fun. It's going to be something a little bit different. And yeah, I really want to get it the absolute best that it can be. So that's why I've started to do these lives, so I can keep a steady rhythm. But meanwhile, work on those stories that I really want to tell. So if you've got a story that you'd like to tell, please get in touch. I'm here to help. And if you're part of our community, great. If not, please join up. It's at www.oneancestor.co, and just go to the community page and add your email address. Really looking forward to seeing you there. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you next week. Have a great week, weekend, day, whatever. Okay, bye-bye.